It was the celebration of my son Caleb's promotion. The company managers were there, drinks in hand, congratulating him with those professional smiles that never quite reach the eyes. Gregory, his direct boss, approached me with curiosity that was barely concealed. "Margaret, I heard you got married recently? Congratulations. And your husband, what does he do?" Before Arthur could open his mouth, before I could say a word, Caleb let out a laugh that echoed through the room and went through my chest like a knife. "He washes dishes at a restaurant," he said with a huge smile, almost proud of his own cruelty. "Yeah, he stays back there in the kitchen scrubbing dirty pots all day, for about $200 a week. You can imagine him, all greasy, with his hands wrinkled from so much detergent." Gregory and Patrick, the other manager, nodded with disdain. Their faces transformed into masks of condescending pity. They turned around almost immediately, as if being near us might infect them with our supposed mediocrity. Brittany, Caleb's wife, touched my arm with fake compassion. Everyone started treating us as if we were invisible, as if we were less than them. And then it happened. Gregory's phone rang. He answered as he walked away, but his voice changed in seconds. His face paled until it turned almost gray. "Mr. Sterling," he said with a trembling voice. Yes, he is here. He looked at me. He looked at Arthur. He looked at Caleb. And in that instant, that precise instant, the whole world was about to flip upside down. But I have to go back. I have to explain how we got here. How such an absurd lie became everyone's truth. How my own son, my only son, the person I carried in my womb and raised alone after his father died, became the architect of my humiliation. And how I, Margaret, at 69 years old, decided to allow it. I decided to stay quiet and observe, because I needed to know. I needed to confirm something I was terrified to acknowledge, that perhaps I had raised a stranger, someone who valued appearances more than love, status more than loyalty, invented hierarchy more than basic humanity. Arthur and I met 8 months ago at a business leadership conference. I attended as a special guest. He was sitting there in the back rows, discreet, almost invisible, not like the other executives who need to scream their self-importance with flashy suits and overly loud laughter. Arthur had something different, a powerful stillness, a security that didn't need external validation. We spoke after my presentation. He asked me intelligent questions about crisis management, about female leadership, about second chances. He didn't brag about anything. He didn't drop company names or impressive figures. We just talked, like two real people in the middle of a sea of corporate masks. We saw each other again, and again. And 6 months later, without fanfare or an ostentatious ceremony, we got married. A small, intimate wedding with 5 guests. Caleb was there, but with that distant look he used when something didn't meet his social expectations. What nobody knew, what nobody could know, was who Arthur really was. CEO of the largest multinational tech conglomerate in the Americas. The same company where Caleb had just been promoted to junior manager after 4 years of busting his hump on mediocre projects. The same company that billed $3 billion annually. The same company where Gregory and Patrick, those two who looked at us with scorn at the party, were barely expendable middle management. Arthur managed operations in 12 countries. He negotiated with governments. He signed mergers that appeared on the front pages of financial newspapers. But nobody knew because he couldn't afford for them to know. Too many threats, too much exposure, too many risks of kidnapping, extortion, harassment. He had built an almost ghostly public identity. He appeared at board meetings under a pseudonym. His corporate photos were never published. His interviews were always with his back turned or with a distorted voice. He was a powerful ghost, and I knew it. I knew everything, but I decided not to tell Caleb. When my son asked what my new husband did for a living, Arthur responded with his usual protective vagueness. "I work in the industrial kitchen area." He said it because he literally spent half the day in the executive dining room on the 30th floor of the corporate tower. It is the place where common food isn't served, but where deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars are closed while drinking Italian espresso, where the CEOs of other companies go to negotiate on neutral territory, where the economic future of entire countries is decided between plates of salmon and glasses of French wine. But Caleb heard kitchen and his brain, contaminated with classism and hierarchical obsession, did the rest. Kitchen equals dishwasher. Dishwasher equals failure. Failure equals shame for the family. I watched it happen in real time. We were having dinner at Caleb and Brittany's house. A tense dinner where my daughter-in-law had prepared everything with that artificial perfection that screams, "Look how much effort I'm making." Arthur vaguely explained his job. Caleb frowned. "So, you work in restaurant kitchens?" Arthur didn't correct him. He just nodded slightly. I was about to intervene when I saw my husband's look, a look that said, "Wait, watch. Let's see what he does." And Caleb did exactly what Arthur expected. What I feared but needed to confirm. He let out an uncomfortable laugh and said, "So, you wash dishes and stuff?" Brittany stifled a gasp. She put her perfectly manicured hand over her perfectly made-up mouth. "Oh my God, Caleb, don't be rude!" But her eyes shone with something worse than rudeness. They shone with satisfaction, with that dark joy of someone who finally has ammunition to feel superior. The news spread like wildfire. In 2 days, the entire extended family knew. In a week, Caleb's friends were discussing it with nervous giggles. In 2 weeks, it was a done deal. Margaret had married a dishwasher, a woman of almost 70, so desperate for company that she accepted the first available man, regardless of the fact that he was a failure with no education or future. I let them believe it. Every hurtful comment, every look of pity, every sigh of fake concern, I let them build their narrative. Arthur asked me only once if I wanted him to reveal the truth. We were alone at home, in that spacious living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and he took my hands with that tenderness that contrasted so brutally with the coldness with which he handled boardrooms. "Margaret, this doesn't have to continue. I can make a call and end this." But I shook my head. "No," I told him. "I need to see how far this goes. I need to know who my son really is when he believes his mother has fallen so low." He understood. He always understood. That's why I loved him. Because in a world of inflated egos and men who need to demonstrate their power every 5 minutes, Arthur was different. His power was so real, so solid, that he didn't need to exhibit it. He could walk down the street like any regular retiree, and nobody would suspect that with a snap of his fingers, he could move $200 million from one country to another. The humiliation began subtly, as it always starts, with comments disguised as concern. "Mom, are you eating okay?" Caleb asked one afternoon while we were visiting his house. "I mean, with Arthur's wages. I don't know if you guys can afford quality food." Brittany nodded with that face of manufactured compassion. "Yes, Margaret. If you need help with groceries, we can chip in. We have a membership at that organic supermarket. You know." I smiled. I thanked them. I told them we were perfectly fine. But I mentally noted every word, every inflection, every look they exchanged between them. That look that said, "Look at the poor old lady, so proud she won't accept reality." Arthur squeezed my knee under the table, an invisible gesture, a reminder that he was there, that this was temporary, that there was an end to this farce, and that end would be devastating for those who underestimated us. Weeks passed, and the humiliations escalated. Caleb started excluding me from family conversations about finances. When he talked about his investments, about his plans to buy a bigger condo, about the bonuses he would receive, he looked at me with pity and changed the subject, as if talking about money in front of me was in poor taste, as if I no longer belonged to that world of successful people who can plan comfortable futures. Brittany was worse, much worse, because her attacks came wrapped in velvet, in that poisonous sweetness that is impossible to confront without seeming paranoid. "Margaret, that blouse is so pretty," she would say, touching the fabric of my clothes as if evaluating its quality. "It's from those discount stores, right? There's nothing wrong with that. You have to be practical when the budget is tight." Or when she saw Arthur. "Tell me, Arthur, what is it like working in a kitchen? It must be exhausting being on your feet all day. And the heat, right? All those greasy fumes. It must be terrible for the skin." Arthur responded with monosyllables. He never fell for the provocations. He never defended himself, and that infuriated them more. Because people like Brittany need reactions. They need drama. They need you to give them the pleasure of seeing you break. But the worst humiliation came 3 weeks before the promotion party. It was a Sunday. Family brunch at Caleb's house. Some of his work colleagues were there too. People he wanted to impress. Patrick was there. That manager with the fake smile who always talked too loud. And a woman named Sarah, an HR manager, who walked around the living room as if she were evaluating everyone for a promotion. Caleb introduced Arthur and me with that barely disguised shame. This is my mom, Margaret. And this is Arthur, her husband. He works in, the gastronomic sector. Patrick raised an eyebrow. You own a restaurant? No, Caleb intervened quickly. He works in kitchens, you know. Scrubbing plates and that stuff? There was an uncomfortable silence. Sarah looked me up and down. Oh, how interesting. It must be difficult at your age, Margaret, dealing with financial limitations. But well, love doesn't understand bank accounts, right? Everyone laughed. That nervous laugh people let out when someone says something cruel but socially acceptable. Arthur ate his salad in silence. I smiled. And inside, I counted the days. I counted the hours until all that fabricated superiority would collapse like a house of cards in the rain. After that meal, while we were driving back home, Arthur finally spoke. His voice was calm, but there was steel in it. Tomorrow I can end this. A call to Gregory. A meeting with human resources. Caleb and his little world of junior managers would find out in seconds. But I refused again. Not yet, I told him. Something still needs to be revealed. Caleb still needs to show how far he is willing to go. Because deep down I was still clinging to an absurd hope. The hope that my son, at some point, would defend me. That he would say, enough. That even if he believed Arthur washed dishes, he would treat me with the respect a mother deserves. But that never came. It never came. Brittany began comparing me to herself at every gathering. I just completely renovated my closet, Margaret. I spent like $3,000, but Caleb insists I treat myself. He says a successful woman needs to look successful. You understand, right? Well, maybe not now, but back in your day I'm sure you understood. Or when she talked about her vacations. We are going to Cabo in first class. Caleb says he can't travel in coach anymore. It's a corporate image thing. You guys don't travel much, do you? I imagine with Arthur's job there isn't much free time. Or budget. Every phrase was a stab. Every comment was a reminder that she saw me as inferior, as someone who had fallen, as someone worthy of pity, but never respect. And Caleb did nothing. He never did anything. He laughed uncomfortably or changed the subject. But never, not once, did he defend me. The straw that broke the camel's back was when Brittany suggested I look for a job. We were having coffee, just the two of us, in that expensive cafe where she felt important. Margaret, I've been thinking. Maybe you could look for a job. Something simple, I don't know. Receptionist or administrative assistant. There are companies that hire older people to demonstrate inclusion. It would be good if you contributed something to the household, don't you think? So Arthur doesn't carry everything. Although, well, I imagine he doesn't earn much either. But 2 small incomes add up to more than one. I stared at her. For the first time in weeks, I let her see something in my eyes. Something that made her blink uncomfortably. I'm fine like this, Brittany, but thank you for your concern. She laughed nervously. No, it's not concern. It's just that Caleb and I want you to be happy. And we know that the financial situation can generate stress in marriages, especially at your age. I nodded. I paid for my coffee, and I walked out of there knowing that the day of truth was approaching. Knowing that when it arrived it would be brutal. Knowing that Brittany and Caleb had no idea of the storm they had summoned. Then the invitation arrived. An elegant card, printed on thick ivory paper with gold lettering. Celebration of the promotion of Caleb Herrera to Senior Manager of Strategic Development. The phrase hit me like a slap. Senior Manager. My son had gotten another promotion. In just 3 months he had jumped from junior to senior manager. Something unusual. Something that normally took years. But there was the invitation, proud, almost screaming his achievement. Brittany called that same afternoon. Margaret, I hope you and Arthur can attend. Although I understand if Arthur can't miss work at the restaurant. I know those places are very strict with schedules. Her voice dripped with poison disguised as consideration. We will be there, I responded calmly. Both of us. There was a pause. Oh, great. Well, it will be in the company's event hall. There will be important people, senior managers, directors, even some high-level executives. So, formal attire. I hung up knowing exactly what she had wanted to say. That we didn't fit in. That we would be Caleb's embarrassment in front of his superiors. That we should have the decency not to attend. Arthur found the invitation on the table that night. He read it in silence, his eyes moving slowly over the words. Then he looked at me with that undecipherable expression he used when processing important information. It's in the executive lounge on the 15th floor, he said finally. I know that place. I've closed $400 million mergers there. I nodded. I know. That's why we are going. That's why we are going to be there when everything explodes. He put down the invitation and approached me. Margaret, you understand that when the truth comes out, it isn't going to be subtle, right? It won't be a polite correction. It's going to be an earthquake. I know, I whispered, and I need it. I need Caleb to see. I need him to understand what he did, what he chose to do. Arthur nodded slowly. Then we will go, but on one condition. When this ends, when everything is revealed, I don't want you to carry any guilt. You did what you needed to do. You observed. You confirmed. And now you are going to witness the consequences. They are not your responsibility. They are his. The days leading up to the party were strangely normal. Caleb called twice to confirm we would attend. His tone was anxious, almost pleading. Mom, seriously? Are you guys going? It is very important to me. This promotion is huge. There are very important people I want to meet the family. Well, apart from the family. The final clarification went through me. Part of the family, not all. No, Arthur. Only the presentable parts. Only the parts that weren't embarrassing. I confirmed we would be there. I heard his sigh of resignation on the other end of the line. Okay, but please, Mom, ask Arthur to wear a suit, even if it's a simple one. And that he doesn't talk much about his job. You know how people at the company are. They can be prejudiced. How ironic, I thought. How absolutely ironic that he asked me to protect Arthur from prejudices when he himself was the most prejudiced of all. Brittany also called, but her call had another purpose. Margaret, I've been thinking, maybe it would be better if Arthur and you arrive a little late. When most of the guests are already there. That way, you don't have to go through that awkward moment of being the first ones. Plus, Caleb wants to make his grand entrance with the senior managers, and it would be easier if you guys arrive afterward. You understand, right? It's just logistics. I knew then that Caleb had asked her to make that call, that he hadn't had the courage to tell me himself, that he wanted us to arrive late, to minimize our presence. To hide us, we will arrive on time. Brittany. At the time the invitation says, she stammered something about traffic and parking, but I interrupted her. See you there. And I hung up before she could continue poisoning the air with her suggestions disguised as help. The night before the party, I almost didn't sleep, not from nerves, but from rage. A cold rage that had been accumulating for months. Every condescending comment, every look of pity, every time they treated Arthur as if he were less. Every time they treated me as if I had lost my dignity. Everything was there, compressed in my chest, waiting for the moment to be released. Arthur found me awake at 3 a.m, looking out the window toward the illuminated city. He sat beside me without saying anything. He was just there. After a long silence, he spoke. Tomorrow Gregory is going to receive a call that will change his perception of reality. Patrick too. Sarah will probably go into shock. And Caleb. Caleb is going to understand that the world doesn't work the way he believed, that the hierarchy he worships so much is more fragile than he imagined. I turned to look at him. His calm profile against the city lights, this man who could move mountains with a signature, but who had accepted being humiliated in silence because he loved me enough to let me confirm a painful truth. Thank you, I told him, for waiting, for not destroying them sooner. He took my hand. I am not going to destroy them tomorrow, Margaret. They are going to destroy themselves. I'm just going to be standing there when it happens. The day arrived. I put on an emerald green dress, elegant but not ostentatious. Arthur wore a perfectly tailored dark gray suit. We looked at ourselves in the mirror before leaving. We looked exactly like what we were. A mature, successful, elegant couple. But I knew that when we entered that party, they would see us differently. They would see a desperate old woman and her failed husband. They would see what they wanted to see, what they needed to see to feel superior. The drive was silent. Arthur drove with that characteristic calm of his. I looked out the window, watching the city pass by, knowing that in a few hours everything would change, that Caleb would have to face reality, that Brittany would lose that condescending smile, that Gregory and Patrick would understand they had made the biggest mistake of their careers. We arrived at the corporate building exactly at 7 in the evening, the time indicated on the invitation. The building was imposing, all glass and steel, rising 30 stories into the sky. Arthur looked at it with familiarity. "I come here every day," he said softly. "This is my building, my company, my legacy, and tonight everyone is going to know it." We entered the lobby. The security guard stopped us. "Good evening. Where are you heading?" Arthur answered before me. "To the event hall on the 15th floor. Private celebration." The guard checked his list. Names: Margaret Herrera and Arthur Sterling. Wait, no. He would have used his common name on the list, or maybe the guard didn't recognize him out of context. The guard frowned. "I don't see you on the VIP list. You must use the service elevator at the back. The main elevator is only for executives and managers tonight." I saw how Arthur's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "That's fine. We'll use the other elevator." We walked toward the back of the lobby, toward that smaller elevator used by the cleaning and maintenance staff. Even there, even in his own company, they treated him as inferior, because he was wearing normal clothes, because he wasn't shouting his position, because he had chosen humility over ostentation. The elevator rose slowly. Arthur watched the numbers change on the screen. "On the 15th floor," he said with a soft voice but with steel in every word, "there is a plaque with my name. It is on the main wall of the lounge. It says, 'This space was inaugurated by Arthur Sterling, CEO.' Nobody ever looks at it. Nobody reads the plaques. But tonight, someone is going to read it, and everything is going to change." The doors opened. The lounge was resplendent, warm lights, tables decorated with champagne-colored tablecloths, elaborate floral arrangements in coral and white tones. There were at least 50 people, all dressed in that corporate elegance that screams success without the need for words. Perfectly pressed dark suits, expensive cocktail dresses, watches that cost more than a car, animated conversations with glasses of wine in hand. And at the center of everything, like a king at his coronation, was Caleb. He was smiling widely, shaking hands, receiving congratulations, and radiating that confidence of someone who believes they have finally arrived where they deserve to be. Brittany was at his side, radiant in a silver dress that probably cost $2,000, touching Caleb's arm possessively every time someone approached. "This is my success story," her body language said. "This is my successful husband, and I am part of this." When we entered, several heads turned. I saw how eyes swept us up and down, evaluating, classifying, discarding. An older couple, probably relatives of someone. Not important, not relevant. Caleb saw us and his smile faltered. For a fraction of a second I saw panic in his eyes. Then he recomposed his expression and walked toward us with that forced energy of someone who wants to wrap something up quickly. "Mom, you guys made it. Great." He kissed my cheek mechanically. Arthur extended his hand, but Caleb ignored it with a casual movement, as if he hadn't seen it. "There are drinks at that table in the back. You can serve yourselves whatever you want. I'm going to be busy with the executives, but catch you later." "Okay." And he walked away. Just like that, without anything else. As if we were an unpleasant chore that had to be completed. Brittany appeared behind him with that tense smile. "Hi, Margaret." "Hi, Arthur. I'm glad you could come, although I must say you arrived through the wrong entrance. The main elevator is at the front, not that service one you used. But well, it doesn't matter. You're already here." Her tone was sweet, but every word was a pinprick. Arthur responded with a calm voice. "No problem. I'm used to that elevator. Brittany let out a little laugh. Of course. I imagine at your job you use the service elevators a lot. The kitchen ones and all that. Well, enjoy the party. There are delicious canapés. And she left, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and condescension. We stood there, Arthur and I, like two ghosts in the middle of a celebration that clearly didn't include us. I grabbed a glass of wine from a waitress passing by. Arthur rejected the alcohol with a polite gesture. He never drank at events. He said he needed to keep his mind clear always, a habit from years of handling corporate crises where one mistake could cost millions, we observed. That was all we did for the first 20 minutes. Observe. Caleb circulated through the room like a politician on a campaign trail. He shook hands effusively. He laughed too loud at mediocre jokes. He introduced Brittany with exaggerated pride. This is my wife, marketing manager at an ad firm. Graduated with honors. Bilingual. Yes, I am very lucky. People nodded, impressed, while Brittany shone under the attention like a plant under the sun. Then I saw Gregory, the senior manager, Caleb's direct boss, a man of about 50, bald, with designer glasses and that air of importance that middle-level corporate power gives. He was talking with Patrick, that other manager with the fake smile and voice that was too loud. Both held expensive whiskeys and spoke with that familiarity of those who share the same hierarchical level. Caleb approached them almost running. Mr. Gregory, Patrick, what a pleasure that you are here. This means a lot to me. Gregory patted him on the shoulder. Caleb, congratulations again. This promotion is well deserved. You have shown consistent results. The company needs people like you. Young, ambitious, hungry for success. Patrick nodded. Yes, and this is just the beginning. With this momentum, you can reach director in 2 years, maybe less. I saw how Caleb's eyes shone, how he inflated with every word of validation, how he became what he had always wanted to be, someone important, someone recognized, someone who mattered. It was then that Gregory noticed us. He narrowed his eyes, trying to place us. Caleb, who are they? Caleb tensed visibly. Oh, they're my mom and her husband. They came to say hi. Gregory smiled with that automatic courtesy used with irrelevant strangers. Ah, the family. That's nice. He walked toward us with Patrick following him. Caleb had no other choice but to accompany them. When they arrived in front of us, Gregory extended his hand. Nice to meet you, ma'am. Gregory Richards, Strategic Operations Manager. I shook his hand. Margaret Herrera. He turned toward Arthur. And you? Arthur Sterling, my husband responded with that calm voice he always used. Patrick intervened with poorly disguised curiosity. Sterling? Works in the company too? Arthur shook his head slightly. Not exactly. Gregory laughed. So what do you do, if it's not indiscreet? There was a silence. Caleb opened his mouth, and then, with that smile I will never forget, that cruel and ashamed smile at the same time, my son said the words that changed everything. He washes dishes at a restaurant. The phrase fell like a bomb. Gregory blinked. Patrick almost spit out his whiskey. Caleb continued, as if he had opened a floodgate and now couldn't stop the torrent. Yeah, he stays back there in the kitchen scrubbing dirty pots all day, for about $200 a week. You can imagine him, all greasy, with his hands wrinkled from so much detergent. He let out a nervous laugh. My mom met him and, well, you know how it is. At that age, people get lonely. She can't be too picky. Brittany appeared out of nowhere, like a vulture smelling blood. Yes, it's a curious story. Margaret got married very fast. She didn't even investigate much about him. But well, love doesn't understand bank accounts, right? Although I must admit it is uncomfortable at family gatherings. He doesn't understand much of our corporate world. Gregory and Patrick looked at us with a mixture of pity and discomfort. That look successful people reserve for those they consider failures. Gregory cleared his throat. Well, to each their own. Right. The important thing is to be happy. Patrick nodded, already looking the other way. Looking for an escape. Yes, totally. Caleb, I think the CFO just arrived. You should go say hi. It's important for your career. Caleb jumped at the opportunity to get away from us. Yes, Yes, you're right. Mom, Arthur, enjoy the party. We'll talk later. And they left. The three of them, Gregory, Patrick, and Caleb. They walked toward the other side of the room, where a group of executives in impeccable suits were conversing with glasses of champagne. They left us standing there like old furniture that nobody wants but out of courtesy cannot be thrown away. I felt something inside me fracture. It wasn't the humiliation that hurt. It was the remorselessness with which Caleb had done it, the naturalness, the total lack of internal conflict. There wasn't a second of doubt in his eyes. There wasn't a pause before pronouncing those devastating words. Only fluidity. Only casual cruelty. Like someone commenting on the weather. Arthur didn't move. He didn't react. But I saw his right hand clench into a fist for 2 seconds before relaxing again. In 20 years of my career, he said in a very low voice that only I could hear, I have fired executives for much less than this. I have shut down entire departments for lack of ethics, and my own stepson just humiliated me in front of his superiors without even blinking. I touched his arm. Not long now. It's almost over. He nodded. I know. And when it ends, Margaret, when this explodes, I don't want you to feel guilt. Caleb chose this. Every word, every laugh, every look of contempt. He chose them. More people started approaching Caleb. Sarah, that HR manager who had been at the family brunch, arrived with a tablet in hand and an official expression. Caleb, I need you to sign some documents for your new contract. Salary increase. New responsibilities. Everything is here. Caleb signed with an exaggerated flourish, almost theatrical. Sarah smiled. Excellent. Now you are officially a senior manager with all the benefits, including access to executive parking, private office, and participation in the quarterly strategic meetings. Brittany squealed with excitement. My love, you did it. I am so proud. She hugged him effusively. Gregory raised his glass. A toast to Caleb Herrera. The future of this company. Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone except Arthur and me. Nobody noticed. Nobody was looking at us. We were invisible, irrelevant. The toast was completed with applause and renewed congratulations. And then, in the middle of all that celebration, Gregory's phone rang. The tone of Gregory's phone cut the air like a knife. It wasn't a common ringtone. It was that special melody, discreet but insistent, that executives program for important calls. Calls that cannot be ignored. Gregory looked at the screen, and his expression changed instantly. The smile froze. The color disappeared from his face, like water draining away. His eyes widened with something that looked between surprise and pure terror. Excuse me, he said with a trembling voice. I have to answer this. It's important. He walked away quickly toward a corner of the room, the phone glued to his ear. We all watched him. The background music kept playing. Conversations continued. But something in Gregory's body language had caught the attention of several people. Patrick frowned. Must be something serious. I've never seen him like that. Caleb laughed nervously. Surely it's some important client. You know how they are, always demanding. But I could see Gregory from where I was. I could see how his free hand went to his forehead, how he nodded repeatedly with jerky movements, how his lips moved saying, yes, sir, yes, sir, of course, sir. His posture was one of total subordination, of genuine fear. Arthur leaned toward me imperceptibly. That is my executive secretary, he whispered. I asked her to call him exactly at 8:30. I gave her very specific instructions. She is going to tell him that the CEO needs to speak with him immediately about an urgent matter related to tonight's celebration. My heart beat faster. So this is real. It's happening. Arthur nodded almost imperceptibly. There is no turning back now. In 5 minutes, this whole farce ends. And Caleb is going to understand that the world doesn't work the way he believed. I watched my son. He was chatting animatedly with Sarah, oblivious to what was about to explode. He gestured enthusiastically, talking about his plans for the condo, about the innovations he would implement, about how he would take the company to the next level. How ironic, how absolutely ironic that he was talking about taking the company to the next level without knowing that the true leader of that company was standing 3 meters away, being treated like trash. Gregory walked back like a sleepwalker. His face had gone from pale to ashen. He held the phone as if it were a grenade about to explode. He reached where Caleb was and interrupted him without ceremony. "Caleb, I need to talk to you. Now. It's urgent." Caleb blinked, surprised. "Mr. Gregory, is everything okay? You look upset." Gregory looked around nervously. "I just received a call from the CEO's office." There was a collective silence. Several people nearby stopped talking. The word CEO had that effect. It was like pronouncing the name of a god, remote, powerful, inaccessible. Patrick approached immediately. The CEO called. "Why? Is something wrong with the company?" Gregory shook his head, confused. "I don't know. His assistant said he needs to speak with me about something related to this celebration, specifically about a guest who is here." Caleb laughed nervously. "A guest? Which guest?" "Only family and colleagues are here." Brittany intervened with a worried tone. "There isn't a problem with the party budget, is there? Right? Caleb told me the company would cover everything, but maybe there was a misunderstanding." Gregory didn't answer. He dialed a number with trembling hands. He put it on speakerphone without thinking, probably due to the state of shock. A female voice answered. "Office of the CEO. Karen speaking." "Miss Karen, this is Gregory Richards. I was just called. They said the CEO needed to speak with me." "Yes, Mr. Richards. One moment, please. I'll connect you." There was a pause. The entire room seemed to have stopped breathing. Even the background music sounded lower. And then a voice was heard. A voice that I knew intimately. The voice that had whispered, "I love you" to me that same morning. The voice that had accepted being humiliated in silence for months out of love for me. "Gregory, this is Arthur Sterling." The reaction was instant and brutal. Gregory almost dropped the phone. His face went from ashen to green. "Sir, Mr. Sterling, I didn't." His voice broke. Caleb frowned, totally confused. "Arthur Sterling. That is the name of—" He looked toward where Arthur and I were. His eyes widened. "No, it's not possible." Arthur's voice continued from the speakerphone, calm, professional, with that authority that doesn't need to shout. "Gregory, I was informed that you are at the celebration of Mr. Caleb Herrera's promotion. Congratulate him for me. He is a good element. He has potential." Gregory swallowed audibly. "Yes, sir. I am here. He is here too. Excellent. Then there won't be a problem with us meeting in a few minutes. I need to discuss some aspects of the merger with the German firm. There are $8 billion at stake, and I need your immediate input. I also need Patrick Garcia to be present. Is he there?" Gregory looked at Patrick with wild eyes. "Yes, sir. Patrick is here." "Perfect. I will be there in 5 minutes. I am in the building. In fact, I never left." There was a loaded pause. The line remained open, and then Arthur added with a casual tone. "Oh, Gregory, one question. Have you seen my wife Margaret at the party? She is the honoree's mother. I want to say hello to her before the meeting." The silence that followed was tomb-like. Gregory looked at the phone. Then he looked at Arthur and me. Then at Caleb. His brain was clearly trying to process information that made no sense. His wife, Margaret, Caleb's mother. The lady who arrived with the man who. The color returned to his face in the form of intense red. Caleb was paralyzed, his mouth open, his eyes moving frantically between the phone and Arthur. Brittany had paled so much that her makeup looked like a mask over white skin. Sarah dropped her tablet. The crash resonated in the silence. Patrick had put both hands to his head in a gesture of total disbelief. Arthur continued from the phone. Implacable. "Gregory, are you still there?" Yes, sir," Gregory stammered. "Your wife is here. I see her. Good. Then I will see you in a moment. Oh, and Gregory, one more thing." The line hung suspended. Everyone held their breath. "I hope you have treated my wife and me well tonight. It would be very disappointing to discover otherwise." Click. The call ended. Gregory's phone slipped from his hand and fell to the floor. Nobody moved to pick it up. Everyone was frozen in a kind of collective shock. It was Patrick who finally broke the silence. His voice came out like a squeak. That was the CEO. That was Arthur Sterling. And he said Margaret is his wife. And you guys, You guys said that he… Caleb couldn't speak. He opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water. Brittany had started to tremble visibly. Sarah had backed away slowly, as if the mere proximity to the situation could contaminate her. Gregory finally reacted. He turned toward Arthur and toward me with an expression of pure horror. You. It's the CEO, Arthur completed with a calm voice. Yes, I am. I have been CEO of this company for 7 years. I manage operations in 12 countries. The merger I just spoke about is worth more than everything everyone in this room will earn in their entire combined lives. And tonight, at the celebration of my stepson's promotion, I was told that I washed dishes at a greasy restaurant. Gregory fell to his knees. He literally fell to his knees in the middle of the room. Mr. Sterling, I didn't know. My God, I didn't know. If I had known, I never would have. Arthur raised a hand. You don't need to kneel, Gregory. Stand up. You are a manager of this company. You have dignity. Although clearly you have problems recognizing dignity in others when you believe they are inferior to you. Gregory stood up trembling. Patrick had also approached. His face was pure anguish. Mr. Sterling, I didn't know either. If someone had told us… Caleb, Arthur said, turning toward my son. Caleb took a step back instinctively. Arthur walked toward him with measured steps. You have been working in my company for 4 years. 4 years. I hired you personally after reviewing your file. I approved your first promotion because you showed results. I approved this second promotion because Gregory reported your good performance to me. I was considering you for a special leadership program that could take you to the vice presidency in 5 years. Every word was like a hammer. Caleb was shaking. And tonight, Arthur said with a voice that finally showed the steel underneath, tonight you humiliated me in front of your colleagues. You humiliated your mother. You treated us like trash. You invented a degrading story about me and repeated it with a smile. Why, Caleb? Why did you do it? My son opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He tried again. I didn't know. Arthur laughed without humor. You didn't know. Of course you didn't know. Because you never asked. You never investigated. You never cared. You just assumed that because I said I work in an industrial kitchen, I was a dishwasher, and that assumption gave you permission to treat me as inferior, to shame your mother, to laugh at us. Tears started rolling down Caleb's cheeks. Mr. Sterling, Arthur, sorry, please, I didn't mean to. If I meant… Arthur interrupted him. You meant exactly what you did. You wanted to feel superior. You wanted to impress your bosses by putting someone else down. And it worked, didn't it? Gregory and Patrick treated you better after laughing at me. Sarah looked at you with more respect. Everyone did. Because in your world, in this sick corporate world, cruelty toward those you believe inferior is social currency. The entire room was watching us now. 50 pairs of eyes, 50 witnesses to the destruction of Caleb Herrera. Brittany tried to intervene. Her voice came out sharp, desperate. Mr. Sterling, please. This is a misunderstanding. Caleb was joking. We were all joking. It's just that nobody told us who you were. If we had known. Arthur turned toward her with a look that made her recoil. Brittany, you asked me about the heat in the kitchens, about the greasy fumes. You told me it must be terrible for my skin. Do you remember? She paled even more. I was just trying to make conversation. No, corrected Arthur. You tried to humiliate me by disguising your cruelty as curiosity, just like when you suggested to Margaret that she look for a job as a receptionist because 2 small incomes add up to more than one. Just like when you bragged about your first-class vacations and your $3,000 purchases specifically in front of her to highlight that we couldn't afford it. Every comment, every look, every condescending sigh. Everything was deliberate. Everything was cruel. And now you tell me it was a misunderstanding. Brittany started to cry. Tears of panic, not regret. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't ruin Caleb's career over this. He worked so hard to get here. Arthur didn't answer. He turned toward Gregory and Patrick, who remained petrified. You two, he said with a cutting voice. How did you treat me when you thought I was a dishwasher? Gregory stammered. Sir, I was polite. Polite? Repeated Arthur. You nodded with disdain when Caleb said, "I scrubbed dirty pots." You moved away immediately as if my presence were contaminating. You looked at me with that expression you reserve for people you consider inferior. And then you went to talk to the important executives without looking back a single time. That is courtesy to you? Patrick tried to defend himself. Mr. Sterling, in my defense, I just followed the conversation. I didn't say anything offensive. You said nothing, agreed Arthur. Exactly. You said nothing when Caleb humiliated us. You said nothing when Brittany made hurtful comments. Your silence was complicity. Your indifference was cruelty. And now you are here, trembling, because you discovered that the man you considered trash is actually your supreme boss. The man who signs your bonuses, the man who approves your promotions, the man who with one word could end your career. Sarah approached timidly. Mr. Sterling, I personally reviewed Caleb's promotion file. Everything was in order. The numbers, the evaluations, everything justified the promotion. There was no favoritism. Arthur looked at her with an undecipherable expression. I know, Sarah. That's why I approved the promotion. Caleb is competent at his job. That was never in doubt. The problem isn't his professional capacity. The problem is his character. And character, Sarah, is what determines if someone truly deserves power. You can be brilliant at executing tasks, but if you are cruel, if you lack empathy, if you treat people as inferior based on baseless prejudices, then you don't deserve to lead. Because leadership isn't just about numbers and results. It's about integrity. And Caleb just demonstrated that he has none. Sarah nodded quickly, desperate to distance herself from the disaster. You are absolutely right, sir. Completely. Maybe we should reconsider the promotion. Review the character evaluation protocols. Arthur shook his head. I am not going to take the promotion away from Caleb. That would be unfair. He earned it professionally. But what I am going to do is make sure he understands the consequences of his actions. And that everyone here understands that in my company, cruelty toward anyone, regardless of their real or perceived position, will not be tolerated. Caleb finally found his voice. It sounded broken, childish. Mom, I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't mean to hurt you guys. I thought. All heads turned toward me. It was the first time someone addressed me directly since the truth exploded. I had remained silent, observing, feeling every emotion go through me like an electric current. Pain, rage, disappointment, but also something strange. Something like relief. Because finally the mask had fallen. Finally I had seen who my son really was without the filters of blind maternal love. What did you think, Caleb? I asked with a calm voice. He took a step toward me. I thought Arthur was, well, that he was someone common, someone without success. And I wanted my bosses to respect me. I wanted to impress them. So you used me, I said. You used my supposed error in judgment, my supposed desperation, as currency to buy respect. You sacrificed my dignity to raise your status. Tears ran freely down his face now. I didn't see it like that. I didn't think it was that serious. They were just comments. They were just jokes. The words came out of me with a clarity that surprised even myself. They were just comments. They were just jokes. Caleb, I raised you as a widow. Your father died when you were 8. I worked 3 jobs simultaneously to pay for your private education. I sold your father's car to pay for your college. I skipped meals so you could have new books. I gave you everything, everything I had. And when finally, after 30 years alone, I found someone who loved me, someone who treated me with dignity and respect, you decided to turn him into an object of mockery, not because he had hurt you, not because he was a bad person, but because you believed he was poor, because you believed he was inferior. And that equation in your head where poor equals inferior, that is what really breaks my heart. Caleb was sobbing openly now. Forgive me. Please, Mom. Forgive me. I love you. I have always loved you. I approached him. I took his face in my hands like I did when he was a child and had nightmares. I love you too, Caleb. I will always love you. You are my son, but I don't like you. I don't like the person you have become. I don't like your obsession with status. I don't like how you treat people you consider beneath you. I don't like that you value appearance more than substance. And I don't know if that has a solution. I don't know if you can change. But what I do know is that tonight, you learned something. You learned that the world doesn't work the way you believed, that hierarchies are illusions, that real power doesn't scream, and that the person you despise the most turns out to be the one controlling your future. Brittany had let herself fall into a chair, crying into her hands. Gregory and Patrick remained standing like statues, terrified to move or speak. The rest of the guests kept a prudent distance, watching the drama unfold as if it were a movie. Some whispered among themselves, others simply watched with huge eyes. Sarah typed frantically on her phone, probably reporting the situation to HR or legal. Arthur finally spoke again. His voice had recovered that professional and distant tone he used in board meetings. Gregory, Patrick, I expect to see you in my office tomorrow at 8 a.m. We are going to have a long conversation about organizational culture, unconscious biases, and the type of leadership we want to cultivate in this company. Both nodded vigorously. Yes, sir. Of course, sir. Whatever you order, sir. Arthur turned toward Caleb. And you, he continued, you keep your promotion, you keep your salary, you keep your office and your benefits. But you are going to do something for me. I saw hope appear in Caleb's eyes. Anything. Whatever you ask, during the next 6 months, said Arthur, you are going to work 1 Saturday a month at the community soup kitchen the company sponsors. You are going to serve food. You are going to wash dishes. You are going to clean tables. You are going to coexist with people who really wash dishes to survive. People who work 2 jobs and barely make ends meet. People you would consider failures. And you are going to do it without complaining, without bragging about it on social media, without turning it into a performance of humility. You are going to do it in silence, and you are going to learn. You are going to learn that the value of a person is not in their bank account, nor in their corporate title. It is in their humanity, in their empathy, in their capacity to treat others with dignity, no matter who they are. Caleb nodded like a bobblehead. Yes, yes, I will do it, I promise. Arthur hadn't finished. And if at any moment during those 6 months I catch you treating someone badly, if I hear that you made a derogatory comment, if I find out that you looked with disdain at someone you consider inferior, not only will you lose your promotion, you will lose your job. And I will personally ensure that every major company in this sector knows exactly why. Understood. Caleb swallowed saliva. Understood. Arthur nodded. Good. Now enjoy what is left of your party, although I suspect the mood is already ruined. He turned toward me and extended his hand. Margaret, I think it is time to leave. I took his hand. I felt it warm, solid, real. We walked toward the exit of the hall. The sea of people opened before us like biblical waters. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just watched us pass. When we reached the door, Arthur stopped and turned one last time. Oh, and Caleb, he said with a voice that echoed through the hall. Congratulations on your promotion. I really hope you use it to be a better person. Not just a better employee, a better person. And we left. The doors closed behind us with a soft click that sounded like thunder in the silence. The corridor was empty. Our footsteps echoed on the polished marble as we walked toward the elevator. Arthur didn't let go of my hand. I didn't let go of his either. It was then that everything really hit me. Not the humiliation of the party, not Caleb's cruelty, but the full reality of what I had just witnessed. My son, the person who had been my reason for existing for so many years, had sacrificed me without thinking twice on the altar of his ambition. And what was worse, he had done it with a smile, with lightness, like someone discarding a crumpled paper. My legs went weak. Arthur held me immediately. Margaret, are you okay? Do you want to sit down? I shook my head, although the tears were already beginning to fall. No, I don't want to be here. I want to leave. I want to get out of this building and never come back. He hugged me right there, in the middle of the empty corporate corridor. He didn't say anything. He didn't try to console me with empty words. He just held me while I cried against his chest, while I let out all the accumulated pain of months of small humiliations that had turned into a huge wound. When I finally pulled away, he took a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped my tears with a tenderness that contrasted brutally with the coldness he had shown minutes before in the hall. That was Arthur, capable of being implacable in business, but infinitely gentle with me. "Sorry," I said with a trembling voice. "I didn't want to break down." "You don't have to apologize for feeling," he responded. "What you just lived through was brutal. Your son betrayed you in the most public way possible. You have the right to cry. You have the right to be shattered. But I also want you to know something." He waited until I looked him in the eyes. "Nothing that happened in there has to do with your value. Nothing that Caleb said or did changes who you are. He acted from his own smallness, from his own fear, from his own sick need for validation. But you, Margaret, you are bigger than all that. You always have been. That's why I loved you from the moment I met you, because I saw a woman who didn't need to shout her worth, who didn't need to prove anything to anyone, who simply was. We took the main elevator this time. Nobody stopped us. The security guard who had earlier sent us to the service elevator now looked at us with an uncomfortable expression, clearly already informed of who Arthur was. He gave us an exaggerated salute. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling." "Ma'am. Have an excellent night." Arthur didn't answer. Neither did I. We simply walked toward the parking lot where our car was waiting. A discreet vehicle, nothing ostentatious, because Arthur had never been one to show off. We drove in silence for the first 20 minutes. I looked out the window watching the city pass. The lights, the people walking on the sidewalks, couples laughing, families dining in restaurants, normal life, life that continued regardless of the fact that my world had fractured. Finally I spoke. "Did you know it was going to be this bad? That it was going to hurt this much?" Arthur kept his eyes on the road. "Yes, I knew. That's why I asked you so many times if you wanted to continue. That's why I offered to end this sooner. Because I knew that when you reached the end, when you saw the complete truth without filters, it was going to be devastating. But I also knew that you needed to see it. You needed to confirm your suspicions, because living with doubt would have been worse." He was right, as always. If I had stopped this sooner, I would have always wondered if I was exaggerating, if I was being unfair to Caleb, if maybe he really loved me and was just going through a difficult phase. But now I knew. Now I had absolute certainty, and certainty, however painful, was better than illusion. "Do you think he can change?" I asked. "Do you think what happened tonight transforms him into someone better?" Arthur sighed. "Honestly, I don't know. I have seen people change after crises like this. I have seen arrogant executives become humble after falling, but I have also seen people who just learn to hide their cruelty better, who become more careful, but not more compassionate. Caleb has to want to change. He has to do the internal work, and I can't tell you if he will. I can only tell you that I gave him the tools. I gave him the opportunity. What he does with it depends completely on him." We arrived home around 10 at night. A modest house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing that screamed wealth. Nothing that gave away that the owner managed billions of dollars. Arthur had always said that ostentation was for insecure people, that true power doesn't need to exhibit itself. We entered, and the familiarity of the space comforted me. The furniture we had chosen together, the photographs on the walls, the knitted blanket on the armchair. Home. Our home. Far from the corporate world, far from hierarchies and ambitions, just the two of us. I poured myself a glass of wine. Arthur made tea. We sat in the living room without turning on the television, just the silence and the occasional sound of cars passing on the street. Finally, Arthur spoke. "Tomorrow is going to be difficult. The news is going to spread throughout the company. Everyone is going to know what happened. Caleb is going to face looks, comments, judgments. Some people are going to feel pity for him. Others are going to enjoy his fall. And he is going to have to decide how he responds to that, whether he victimizes himself or accepts responsibility." "And Brittany?" I asked. "What is going to happen with her?" Arthur took a sip of his tea. "Brittany is interesting. She doesn't work at my company, so I can't do anything directly. But I suspect her marriage with Caleb is going to go through a serious crisis. She married the image of success, the rising manager, the bright future. Now Caleb is stained. He has a shameful story. And Brittany is going to have to decide if she stays for real love or if she flees because the image was ruined. My bet is she runs. People like her don't stay when the ship starts sinking. I felt a pang of something. Not exactly pity for Caleb, but something close. Despite everything, he was still my son. And the idea of him losing his marriage, in addition to his dignity, hurt me. As if he could read my thoughts, Arthur said, "I know you still love him. I know a part of you wants to protect him even now. That is normal. That is being a mother. But Margaret, you have to understand something. The consequences Caleb is facing are not punishment. They are education. They are the only way he can grow. If you protect him now, if you intervene, if you soften the blow, you are only going to prolong his immaturity. Sometimes, true love means letting the people you love face the consequences of their actions." Days passed. Caleb called 17 times in the next 48 hours. I didn't answer. I needed space. I needed to process. I needed to decide how I wanted to relate to him moving forward. Because one thing was clear. Our relationship couldn't go back to being what it was. That naivety had broken. That blind trust had evaporated. If we were going to have any kind of relationship in the future, it had to be a new one. One built on truth and responsibility, not on maternal illusions. Arthur gave me brief reports on what was happening at the company. Gregory and Patrick had had their 8 a.m. meeting. They came out pale and submissive. Sarah had implemented new character evaluation protocols for promotions. Caleb had started working at the community kitchen and, according to reports, he was doing it without complaint. But Arthur also told me something else. He told me that Caleb looked different, quieter, more thoughtful, less sure of himself, and that could be good or bad. Good if he used it for genuine reflection. Bad if it was just shame without growth. On Sunday, a week after the party, someone knocked on our door. Arthur was on a video call with executives from Germany about the merger. I opened it. It was Caleb. He looked terrible. Deep circles under his eyes, wrinkled clothes, messy hair. Nothing like the polished executive from the party. "Mom," he said with a hoarse voice, "please, I need to talk to you." I stood in the doorway without moving. Part of me wanted to slam it in his face. Part of me wanted to hug him. Both impulses fought inside me. Finally, I stepped aside. "Come in, but only half an hour, and you are going to listen as much as talk." He entered like a wounded animal. He sat in the armchair where he had been so many times when he was a child, where he had done homework, where he had watched movies, where he had cried when his first love left him. All those memories went through me. All those versions of Caleb, the innocent child, the insecure teenager, the ambitious young man, and now this, the broken adult facing the consequences of his choices. He started to talk. The words came out rushed, desperate. "Mom, I haven't slept. I can't eat. I go to work and everyone looks at me differently, some with pity, others with satisfaction, as if they were happy to see me fall. In meetings, I feel like they are constantly evaluating me, waiting for me to screw up, waiting to confirm that I am as terrible as they think. And the worst part is, they're right. I am terrible. I did something unforgivable. I treated you in an unforgivable way. I treated Arthur in an unforgivable way. And I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to be different." I let him speak. I let him empty everything out. And when he finished, when he finally ran out of words, when the tears ran down his face, I spoke. My voice was calm but firm. "Caleb, you can't fix it. You can't undo what you did. Words cannot be unsaid. Actions cannot be undone. The only thing you can do is be different from now on. But you have to understand something. Being different doesn't mean acting different out of fear of consequences. It means changing who you are inside. It means examining your values. It means asking yourself why status is so important to you. It means facing your insecurities instead of projecting them onto others." Caleb looked at me with red and swollen eyes. "Mom, I'm doing what Arthur asked. I go to the community kitchen. I wash real dishes. I serve food to people who really need it. And you know what I've discovered?" He paused, his voice breaking. "That they are good people, kind people. People who thank me with genuine smiles. People who work 3 jobs and still find energy to ask how my day was. And I realized something horrible. I realized that I never would have spoken to them if I saw them on the street. I would have ignored them. I would have considered them invisible. Because for me, only successful people existed. People with titles, people with money. And that makes me a monster, right? I nodded slowly. Not a monster, but yes, someone who lost his humanity. Someone who confused human value with economic value. And that, Caleb, is a sickness. A sickness that this society promotes, but doesn't cease to be a sickness. The cure is not easy. It requires constant work. It requires constant humility. It requires reminding yourself every day that your title doesn't make you better than anyone. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. And Brittany. She left. He made a long pause. She says she can't be with someone who is the laughingstock of the company. She says I embarrass her, that I ruined our social reputation, that her friends ask her what happened and she can't stand the shame. She packed her things 3 days ago and went with her mom. She says she needs space. But I know what that means. It means it's over, because she didn't fall in love with me. She fell in love with what I represented. The promotion, the salary, the bright future. And now that that is stained, now that there is a shameful story associated with my name, she doesn't want to be part of that. I felt something heavy in my chest. It wasn't joy for his suffering. It was sadness for the confirmation that Arthur had been right. Brittany had been exactly what we thought. A person who loved status more than the person. And that is painful for you, I said. But it is also valuable information, because it shows you who you were sharing your life with someone who abandoned you in the most difficult moment. That is not love, Caleb. That is convenience. He nodded miserably. I know. And the worst part is I was just like her. Exactly like her. I valued people for what they had, not for what they were. That's why I treated you guys like that. That's why I thought it was okay to humiliate you, because in my distorted head, being poor equaled not deserving respect. He paused. But there is something else I need to tell you. Something I've been carrying. In the community kitchen, I met a man. His name is Joseph. He is 63 years old. He works washing dishes at 3 different restaurants. He leaves his house at 5 in the morning and returns at 11 at night, 7 days a week, to support his granddaughter because his daughter died and the father disappeared. And you know, he is one of the most dignified people I have met. He speaks with pride about his work. He says washing dishes honestly is worth more than stealing or cheating. And when I asked him if he didn't feel bad about his situation, he looked at me as if I were stupid and said, I have health. I have a job. I have my granddaughter. I am rich in the things that matter. And in that moment, Mom, in that precise moment, I realized the scum I had been. Because I told everyone that Arthur washed dishes as if it were the worst thing in the world, as if it were a reason for shame. And it turned out Arthur didn't wash dishes, but Joseph did. And Joseph is worth more than me. He has more integrity than me. He has more humanity than me. Tears were running down my cheeks now. Seeing my son finally understanding, finally processing the magnitude of what he had done, was devastating and hopeful at the same time. Caleb, that realization is the first step, the true first step. Because you aren't defending yourself. You aren't justifying yourself. You are looking straight at your inner ugliness and naming it. That requires courage. A different courage than the one you need to get promoted in a company. The courage to be honest with yourself. He sobbed openly. But I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if I can forgive myself. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I understand. That finally, after 35 years of living blind, I am starting to see. And what I see disgusts me. It disgusts me deeply. I got up and sat next to him. I put my hand on his. Caleb, look at me. He raised his eyes. Forgiveness is not something that is given immediately. It is not a switch that is turned on. It is a process. And that process requires that you keep doing the work, that you keep confronting yourself, that you keep being different, not for a month or 6 months, but for the rest of your life. And maybe, with time, we can rebuild something. Not what we had before, because that already died. But something new, something more honest. Something based on who we really are, not on who we pretended to be. He nodded and hugged me. A desperate hug of a scared child. For a moment I let him be my son again. My boy who needed comfort. But only for a moment. Because I also knew that I had to let him go. I had to let him walk his own path of redemption, without me rescuing him. When he pulled away, I told him, "Now go. Go and keep doing the work. Keep learning from Joseph and real people. Keep confronting your prejudices. And every time you feel the impulse to judge someone for their position, or their salary, or their title, remember tonight. Remember how you felt when you discovered that the world doesn't work the way you believed. Remember the humiliation, not to punish yourself, but to remind yourself that nobody deserves to be treated like that. Nobody." He stood up shakily. "Thank you, Mom, for seeing me, for not shutting the door on me, for giving me a chance." I walked him to the door. Before he left, I told him one last thing. "And Caleb, about Arthur." He nodded, waiting. "You should apologize to him too, directly. Not by email or text, face to face. Because what you did to him was just as serious as what you did to me. Maybe more. Because he didn't have a prior history with you. He didn't have reasons to expect your love. And even so, you treated him with calculated cruelty. He deserves to hear your apology. But only when you are ready to give it genuinely. Not out of obligation. Not out of fear. But because you really understand the damage you caused." Caleb nodded. "I will. When I find the right words. When I can look him in the eyes without wanting to disappear from shame, I will." And he left. I closed the door and leaned against it. Arthur appeared from the study. He had finished his call. "You listened." He nodded. "The last part. You did the right thing. You gave him hope, but also responsibility. You didn't rescue him, and that is exactly what he needed." I walked toward him and hugged him. "How do you handle all this with such clarity? How are you not furious? How do you not want to destroy him after what he did?" Arthur stroked my hair. "Because I have seen this before, Margaret. I have seen young executives consumed by ambition. I have seen how the corporate system can twist people's perception. I have seen brilliant people turn into monsters because the environment rewards them for it. Caleb is a product of that system. That doesn't excuse him, but it explains him. And if there is something I have learned in all my years leading companies, it is this. People can change. Not always, not easily, but they can. And Caleb has an advantage that many don't have. He has real consequences. He has a brutal mirror that shows him who he is. Some executives never get that mirror. They go their whole lives believing that their cruelty is shrewdness, that their lack of empathy is strength. Caleb was lucky to hit the wall now, at 35. He still has time to rebuild himself. The following months were strange. Caleb religiously fulfilled his commitment to the community kitchen. Arthur received reports. At first, Caleb was clumsy, uncomfortable, clearly out of his element, but over time, he began to change. He began to talk to people, to learn their names, to be interested in their stories. Joseph became something like his involuntary mentor. He taught him not only to wash dishes efficiently, but to find dignity in any work. To understand that human value has nothing to do with job prestige. In the company, Caleb became quieter, less boastful. When other managers bragged about their achievements, he remained silent. When there was an opportunity to step on someone to move up, he abstained. And slowly, very slowly, people started to notice. Not everyone forgave him. Some never would. But some saw the genuine effort and began to give him another chance. Brittany tried to return 4 months later, when she saw that Caleb hadn't been fired and that his salary remained. She appeared at his apartment with suitcases and elaborate apologies about having needed space to process. Caleb told her no. He called me that night to tell me, "Mom, I told her I couldn't be with someone who abandoned me when I needed her most. That I couldn't build a life with someone who valued appearance more than substance. That I needed to be alone to keep working on myself, without the pressure of maintaining an image. And you know what? For the first time in my life, I made a decision based on what was right and not on what was convenient." He sounded different, more mature, more real. less like the Caleb who needed constant validation, and more like someone starting to validate himself from within. "I am proud of you," I told him. And I meant it. Not proud of the successful Caleb, but proud of the Caleb who was doing the hard work of changing. Almost a year passed before Caleb finally came to talk to Arthur. He knocked on the door one Saturday afternoon. Arthur opened it. They looked at each other. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Caleb spoke. "Mr. Sterling." "Arthur, can I come in? I need to speak with you." Arthur stepped aside. "Sure." They sat in the living room. I prepared coffee and then discreetly retired to the garden. I knew this conversation had to be between them. Without my presence mediating, without my role as mother softening the edges, I was out there for almost 2 hours. I could see their silhouettes through the window. They talked, sometimes one, sometimes the other. At some point, I saw that Caleb was crying. Arthur remained serene, listening. When they finally came out to the garden, both looked emotionally exhausted. Caleb approached me. He spoke to me. "Mom." He listened to me. And he told me something I will never forget. He looked at Arthur. He told me that true power is not in humiliating. It is in elevating. That a real leader makes others grow, doesn't crush them to seem taller. And that if I really want to be successful, I have to learn to measure my success not by how much I rise, but by how much they rise with me. 2 years have passed since that night. 2 years since Caleb's world turned upside down in the middle of a corporate party. And when I look back now, I understand that that night wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. The painful, brutal, necessary beginning of something completely different. Caleb continues working at the company. But he is different. He is no longer the anxious manager who needed constant validation. He no longer measures his worth by his title or his salary. He finished his 6-month commitment at the community kitchen, but kept going, voluntarily. Every other Saturday, Joseph became his friend, a true friend. Last week, Caleb organized a celebration for Joseph's birthday. Nothing ostentatious, just cake, coffee, and people who really appreciate him. When he told me about that, I heard genuine pride in his voice. Not pride for having done something impressive, but pride for having done something meaningful. Arthur never revoked Caleb's promotion, but he didn't give him special privileges either, and Caleb responded. His performance evaluations now include comments from his subordinates saying, "He listens to me genuinely. He treats everyone with respect, regardless of their position. He admits when he is wrong." Those comments are worth more than any sales figure, because they mean he is changing, that he is becoming the type of leader people follow out of inspiration, not obligation. As for my relationship with Caleb, it is complicated. It always will be. I can't forget what he did. That wound healed but left a scar. But I learned something important in these 2 years. I learned that love doesn't mean the absence of pain. It means choosing to stay despite the pain. It means giving space for growth without guarantees of success. I still love Caleb, but I love him with open eyes, seeing his flaws, recognizing his capacity for cruelty, but also seeing his genuine effort to be better. We see each other once a month, quiet meals where we talk about real things, not about his work or his success, but about what he is learning, about his internal struggles. Those conversations are uncomfortable sometimes, painful, but honest. And honesty, I discovered, is a better foundation for relationships than comfort. Arthur and I remain the same. Well, not the same, better. What we lived through united us in a way few things could. He saw me in my most vulnerable moment, and he didn't try to fix it. He was just there, holding me. And I saw his capacity to be firm without being vengeful, to establish consequences without cruelty, to teach without humiliating. For me, the true power he has is not in the boardrooms. It is in how he treats me when nobody is watching. Sometimes I think about that night, about Caleb smiling while he humiliated me, about the exact moment when the phone rang and everything started to collapse. And I wonder what would have happened if I had stopped everything sooner. And I always reach the same conclusion. It would have been easier, but less true. Caleb never would have learned. Sometimes the most painful path is the only real path toward growth. There is something Arthur says often when he talks to young executives. He says, True character is revealed not when you have power over others, but in how you use that power. You can crush or you can elevate. You can humiliate or you can dignify. And that choice, that constant choice in thousands of small moments, is what defines who you really are. Not your title, not your salary, but how you treat the human being in front of you when you believe nobody important is watching. Yesterday, Caleb called me excited. "Mom, Joseph is going to be able to retire. His granddaughter got a full scholarship to college, and I arranged with the company to give him a small supplemental pension." Arthur approved it. He said it was an investment in humanity. I felt something warm expand in my chest. Caleb continued. "That man I would have ignored 2 years ago taught me more about leadership and dignity than any corporate seminar. He taught me that you can have nothing material and still be rich. That honest work, any honest work, deserves absolute respect." We hung up and Arthur appeared behind me. "Good news," I nodded. "Caleb is helping Joseph," he smiled. "That is the type of power worth having. The power to improve someone's life without expecting anything in return. Caleb is learning." I hugged him. "Thank you. For everything. For not destroying my son when you could have. For teaching him instead of punishing him." He kissed my forehead. "I did the right thing. And the right thing is not always the most satisfying in the moment. But in the long run, it always yields better fruit. This is my story. The story of a night that changed everything. The story of a son who had to fall to learn to stand correctly. The story of a husband who had all the power in the world and chose to use it with wisdom instead of revenge. And the story of a mother who had to let go of her son so he could finally grow. I don't know what comes next, but I know this. The truth, however painful, is always better than the illusion. Always, because in the truth, as much as it hurts, lives the only real possibility of transformation.